What is going on, everyone? We are here with another spotlight interview series hosted by yours truly, ACK. Again, I always just keep saying this, but it's just so amazing because back in 2020, when this all started during the pandemic and stuff, I was just kind of doing it for fun. And I was writing, and the writing was more of the passion and what I was going in. But then I started doing this interview series, and I really just started hearing these other artists' stories. And I'm like, this is something that I want to keep doing. I want to keep spreading people's stories through music because at the end of the day, yes, listening to artist songs are so amazing and everyone is super talented when it comes to singing and songwriting when they're in that lane. But hearing their background and hearing their story on how they actually came up in music and just what their whole process is like is just super, super unique. So we are here today, going down to Southern Arizona, and we are with Bryce J Rogers. Bryce, how are you today?
I'm doing excellent. Happy to be here. Thank you, AC.
No, of course. Thank you for coming on. I always just say thank you. I think I kind of said it a little before the interview is just thank you for taking the time to just out of your day to talk about your story through music because it just always means a lot to me when artists are willing to come on the show and just share their story and just talk about music because I could sit here for hours and hours. I could make a lifelong video of just talking about music because it's just a passion of mine. So again, just thank you so much for coming on and taking the time to do this.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I definitely share that sentiment of being able to just talk about music. And so it's really nice to have an opportunity to just chat about the art and the creation of it. So thank
Yeah.
you.
No, of course. So, kind of before we hop into the questions, obviously we'll get to know a little more, yeah, a little bit more about yourself, like through music and stuff. But kind of before we start, if you want to just let the people know a little bit about kind of like who you are, just as a person, like what you're kind of doing for work and stuff, and just like where you are and just stuff like that.
Yeah. I'm primarily a singer-songwriter or a performing songwriter. Um, I currently am working on an album here in my home studio. The album's called I'm Okay, I'll Be Okay. It's been the never-ending process. It's years in the making. 16 songs, all songs that I wrote in my youth, in my early and late teens. So it's been an experience putting that together. Right now, I am working some straight jobs. I do landscaping on the side, and I also work at a oil and vinegar store
Oh,
in
okay.
Tubac, Arizona. Yeah.
Nice. No, that's awesome. And it's just cool because obviously we're gonna get into it kind of when I talk about the first question is obviously you're going back to songs that you wrote when you were younger. And that kind of leads into like kind of the first question, and then we'll get into your whole songwriting process later. But I always start with the basic of basics is how did you get into music? Like where did the whole singing, songwriting, like playing instruments, like just how did all that start? Like obviously it seemed like it was at an early age for you. So just how did all that come about?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite questions. Music has always been like one of my best forms of communication. I really like dived headfirst into music around the age of 12, but it was always a really comfortable space for me. And in my youth, I wasn't necessarily naturally talented at all in music. There's actually a story I like telling where I tried out for a church Christmas choir, and it's pretty low pressure, but I was asked to not participate because it would be too much work to train me. And when I heard that, I was like, you know what? Screw that. I really want to sing and I want to make music. And so I started going to lessons and doing all that stuff. And so I got my start playing music on different church worship teams in my area, playing acoustic guitar and doing a little singing here and there, and just worked very, very hard, especially on the vocals, hours and hours of practice. Eventually kind of stepped away from the church scene of music, but started going and doing open mics and lots of other stuff and working on my own music and writing. And music has just always been this form of communication that I couldn't find in other ways, when I wasn't sure how to express myself or how I was feeling. I could sit down with my guitar and write, and it came so naturally. And that's really what got me started in music was that freedom of expression. I was like, wow, this is what I want to do, you know.
No, exactly. And I totally reminisce with that a lot because it's just that's how I started with my songwriting. I only started back in 2018. A lot of people know I lost my grandfather unexpectedly, and
Mm,
that's how I started in the music business. Is I wrote that song within 2 hours, and then I reached out to this kid on Instagram, but now he's like a brother to me. Is Nathan Vasquez? Shout out to him. It's always just a really cool and unique story is that he was down he was stationed in I forget where he was stationed now. He was down in North Carolina, I believe. And he was in the Coast Guard, and I reached out to him because he was performing just on the side and stuff while he was in the Coast Guard. And I sent this out to him, and I'm like, hey man, listen, like I have this song, like I've heard some of your covers and stuff like that, and I wrote this song and I just let it all loose. Like it's about losing my grandfather, and it just really hit
mm.
me different. Not even 10 minutes later, he calls me, and I've never even talked to this man. Like I never even talked to him before. He just calls me out of the blue, and we FaceTimed and we sat there, and he's like, listen, I've had this melody just stored away, and it's just I think it fits perfectly with what you just wrote. So he started
Mm,
playing it, and I probably cried for at least 20 minutes afterwards. It was just,
wow.
and yeah, it's just always a cool story I love sharing because that's just how powerful music can be. And it means a lot because like kind of like what a lot of your songwriting comes from, I think too, is like emotions and just what you're going through and stuff like that. And I relate a lot when artists say stuff like that because at the end of the day, that's where a lot of my songwriting comes from too, is the emotions.
Mm, yeah, yeah. Well, first, I'm sorry about your grandpa.
Thank you.
I think that's one of the most special parts about art and music is you can take like a moment like that where it's like, man, I can barely figure out how to express how I'm feeling with this, how it's sitting on me. Can anybody else relate? And sometimes it feels like no one can. And
Right.
then you write a song and you share it and someone's like, "Oh my God, you said exactly what's been on my heart." And you have
Mhm.
this connection that is just, so ephemeral. It's this amazing thing and it can be so healing.
Exactly. So kind of getting into the next question is because I mean, when you're an artist, you write songs and you record music and stuff like that, but there's obviously some bigger name artists out there that you must look up to. So kind of at the end of the day, is just like who are some of the artists that you listen to, and just kind of who are some artists that really have inspired you to kind of just pursue music even more?
Ah, great question. Great question. There's so many amazing, amazing artists out there. Um, I think in my youth, some of the big ones for me was kind of more on an alternative scene, like Green Day and the All American Rejects.
Hmm.
I loved listening to Green Day so much. And then as far as like songwriting goes, there's a few songwriters that really had a big impact on me. One would be James Blunt. Um, very, very like thoughtful, straightforward songwriter. Another that I really like a lot is Nako Bear from Medicine for the People.
Yep.
He has a really unique form of songwriting, and the flow that he has. I mean, he gets out so many lyrics in a song. It's quite impressive. And the all of the extra stuff never holds him back. He's like, oh well, I kind of lost the melody there. I'll just make a whole new one for the next verse. No problem. I'll get my point across any way I can. So I definitely Nako Bear, Bob Marley, Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day. Those guys rock.
Yeah. No, and that's awesome. And I mean, a lot of people know is like some of my inspirations is because I grew up in country music, and that like 90s, early 2000s is just always where I reminisce with a lot of artists that have really inspired me just through songwriting, and the whole storytelling aspect through lyrics is just really what connects with me the most. And that kind of leads us into the third question, is because it's always so cool to hear an artist's creative process when it comes to writing and just producing a song and stuff like that. And obviously you have a lot of really cool songs out. I was listening to a bunch of them this morning before the interview.
Thanks.
um, and I always have to quote um, Garrett Walker. I mean, the man just said it perfectly when I was on an interview with him. it's like putting a puzzle together. Whether you have 500 or 1,000 piece puzzle just laid out in front of you, it's all scrambled up and you don't know how it's all going to fit together. And then you start slowly putting some of these pieces together. You start making like the border, and then you start kind of just putting all like the middle pieces together, and by the end you have this whole clear painted picture, and then you can frame it up and hang it, and you have that for the rest of your life to cherish. And it's like and that's what songwriting is at the end of the day. You write some of the stuff down, and I know I have barrels full of random stuff that never is going to go anywhere. And then by the end of the day, like I'll have this whole song written out and get it all produced and stuff like that. So my
Mm.
question is what is your creative process like?
Oh, I love that puzzle analogy. I think that's so accurate because sometimes, when you're creating something, sometimes it's like a 25 or 50 piece puzzle and it's like super simple and you know where everything's going. And sometimes it's 5,000 pieces and you're like, "Oh man, I don't know where the edges are. I don't know where I'm at right now." Um, and so it's such a treat, and I think it's a little different for everybody, but I I like songs that are straightforward. The album I'm working on right now has definitely been that like 5,000 piece puzzle. It's been a lot of dissecting and you know, I had like about 50 songs picked out and narrowed it down to 16. So even just within that spectrum, there was a lot of decisions to be made. Um, and so it's kind of a big project. Um, and it really was just that like time commitment of going through each one and trying to figure out how they fit into this full puzzle, this story, something that's kind of digestible. Um, Again, that's that 5,000 piece element. I like things to be more straightforward. I really like doing stress factor testing, doing things that kind of like put you on the edge a little bit to get the work out. Um, I did this thing for a song I wrote called These Mountains where I just went outside, at like midnight when it was pretty cold in January, and I went out barefoot and I had a pot of coffee inside waiting for me. And the goal was, however fast I can write this song, is I can go inside and get some socks on my feet and drink some coffee.
Yeah.
And I wrote almost the whole song in like 15 minutes. Not all of it was good, but kind of like just putting it to the test, being like, okay, this is going to be unbearable until it's done. It created something really beautiful. And so when it's not a 5,000 piece puzzle, I like to try to keep it simple and add some inspiring elements.
No, and that's awesome. That's like really cool and unique, like a different way to kind of look about songwriting, because I've never actually even thought about doing something like that. Like that just kind of opens up like a whole new door to kind of like just try that perspective and see what happens there, because like I would totally be willing to do something like that.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of I just had a recent interview with Tyler Seabolt, and he quoted from Ed. I think Ed Sheeran was the one that said it. It's kind of, and I think you'll probably relate to this just because obviously you didn't write like a full song in 15 minutes. It was just like it wasn't the best. Like so obviously you still have to clean it up
Hmm.
and everything like that, but
Yeah.
it's kind of like I think I forget the exact quote, so I'm gonna butcher this, but it had to do with a dirty faucet, and then like you're gonna get all that yuck and guck and stuff out of there, and that's all like the like bad stuff, like in the not bad stuff in the song, but like all the stuff that doesn't make sense. And then by the time you
Hmm.
fix that faucet and you clean it and then you have that clear water, that's when the stuff starts flowing, and that's when the real song comes together finally. Think it was something along those lines. I probably butchered it really bad, but
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. I love it.
yeah. So, kind of getting into the fourth question. It's always the hardest question, and a lot of artists freeze up on this question, but then some know who they are. And at the end of the day, you still could be figuring out who you are. I don't know who I am yet. I know I'm a songwriter, I know I'm a producer, and I know I host this interview series, but I'm still working on my craft and I'm still trying to figure out who I am at the end of the day. And with all these other artists out there, like on TikTok, on Instagram, just trying to make it and gather a fan base and stuff like that, what would you say makes you at the end of the day? Like what makes Bryce J Rogers Bryce J Rogers?
Oh, yeah, you're right. This is a tough question. And I definitely agree. Like, I'm still figuring out who I am, what makes me tick. I think that's like one of the biggest reasons I do music. Maybe if I knew exactly who I was, I wouldn't be like so head over heels with music all the time because it's kind of like my coping and my processing to figure out where I'm at. Um, but I think what makes me maybe unique in my own sense is that I'm really just in love with the process of being observational. I like to say it how it is, like to be straightforward, and sometimes a lot of times people say one thing and mean another, and that's also true in music. And I think that something that makes my music somewhat unique is just the ability to say things very plainly. Um, and that's something I really enjoy about my music personally. So if I had to pick one thing, I would say it's that, the straight observations about emotions in the world around me.
Right. No, and that's awesome. And that like kind of ties into your songwriting, obviously. And that's what you want people to take from your music. And that's just cool because, and like I said, there's never any wrong or right answers when it comes to any of these questions, but more so that question in particular. Because at the end of the day, people are still trying to figure out who they are. They're still trying to build their craft. And it doesn't even have to go for music. It's just in real life in general. Like people every day are still trying to work on themselves and still trying to figure out where
Yeah.
they are and where they want to go. So it's always just cool to ask that question, even though it's a very difficult question to answer sometimes.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that's kind of one of my hopes is as I continue writing, I'm gonna figure it out. So if anybody sticks along for that journey and keeps listening to the music, maybe you'll find out too. So
Exactly. And that kind of leads into the next question. And we kind of did touch up on this a little bit. Obviously, you're working on a new album with 16 songs on it. But where do you want to go with your music? Like, what are your goals as an artist? Just what else can we expect down the road? I mean, obviously, we have the album, but like, is there anything else like we can get some little tidbits on and just what else is down the road for you?
yeah, yeah. I have a similar passion as you, AC, with talking with songwriters and seeing what makes them tick and the art. Um, Something I do along with the music and the album is I do this little series called Tucson Murals and Music. Tucson is my hometown here in Arizona, and we've got just an incredible selection of public murals. And so, me and a lot of songwriter friends, about a dozen so far, have been getting together and filming live performances of all original music in front of these murals.
Yeah.
And so, it's been a really cool project. It's something that I've been doing for about a year now, and I've done about 12 different songwriters. So that's something that our little Tucson community here is going to keep on doing, the Tucson murals and music. Um, Also, of course, the album. It's been a big project in the works. I want to release it in September of this year, get it all done with, because I have my next album already written. I'm just kind of waiting to pull the trigger on this one with old songs. So as
Yeah.
soon as I can get that done, I'm very excited to start working on some new music, talking about. I'm pretty passionate about social justice and activism and taking care of the planet. So the album I'm working on right now is all about growing up, and the next one is about uh, being active and making a difference and doing stuff like that. So
No,
yeah,
exactly. And that's awesome because like I support that. And honestly, I've listened to a lot of your songs. Like I was listening to a bunch this morning and I have been leading up to this whole interview. And honestly, you're just a super, super talented songwriter and a singer at the end of the day because I think the thing that really connects and like we've talked about through this whole interview is your storytelling aspect just throughout a whole song is just it's incredible because I could just sit
mm,
there and like I could lay down and just close my eyes and listen, and I could paint that whole picture in my head of just the whole song that you're singing and that you're trying to talk about. So it's just really, really cool. And I'm excited for the albums to come out and I'm on the ride with you. And I just hope
thank you.
see what I see, and hopefully they listen to you and they're along for the ride with me, with you.
Yeah, yeah, and thank you for an opportunity to be heard here. You're definitely, I appreciate your support so much and just the opportunity to talk about the album and the music. This has been great.
No, of course. And I appreciate you taking the time, just like I said, out of your day to just talk about music and talk about your story. And that's obviously all the questions I have. And kind of getting into the good part of the interview is hearing a song by you. So, with all that being said, I'll kind of just let you take the floor. You can talk about what song you're going to do. And then after that, if you want to just kind of let people know your social handles, where we can find you, and I'll just kind of put myself on mute and the floor is yours.
Cool. Cool, cool.
The song I'm about to play is called Painted Angel. It's off my upcoming album, I'm Okay, I'll Be Okay. I released this song as kind of a teaser for the album, so there is a single version of this available online. And the full album, I'm Okay, I'll Be Okay, will be out September 2022, so stay tuned. You're brilliant and wonderful, everything I've ever wanted. Just so you know, if you want my heart, you've already got it. I don't know when I'll see you again. The painted angel stuck inside my head. I say I'm okay, but I've had my doubts. I hope that you'll stay here with me now. I don't know when I'll see you again. The painted angel stuck inside my head. I packed my bags and here I wait for you to come to take me away. I wrote this down with little faith that I would ever say your name out loud. I say I'm okay, but I've had my doubts. I hope that you'll stay here with me now. Here comes the rain. I'm okay. I say I'm okay. I hope that you'll stay here with me now. My name is Bryce J Rogers. This was an original tune called Painted Angel. You can find it on your favorite streaming platform. Thank you so much to AC for having me on this podcast today. It is such a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about music and what inspires me. So thank you so much for having me. This is such a great experience. If you want to check out more of my music, you can find me online, Bryce J Rogers. Check out my YouTube channel. I post weekly. If you want some exclusive content, I also have a Patreon channel. You can find that at patreon.com/Bryce J Rogers. Thank you again, AC, for having me on your show. This has been awesome. Bye now.
And that concludes another episode of the Spotlight series. Bryce, just thank you again so much, man, for coming on. Painted Angels, y'all can go check that out on Spotify, all streaming platforms. And y'all know the drill is that's the end of this episode. And stay tuned for next week, Sunday, 1 p.m. Y'all know the drill at this point. We got new artists every week. So I'll see y'all next week.